The conference room was cold. Ha-Yoon Kim noticed this the moment she stepped inside. Everything about Galactic Council Station Gamma 7 felt cold. The metal walls were gray and smooth. The lights were too bright and too white. Even the air tasted recycled and sterile. Ha-Yoon walked to her seat at the long table. Her black uniform was crisp and clean. The Earth insignia on her shoulder caught the light. She carried only a small datapad and nothing else. Behind her, Lieutenant Jae-min Yoon followed quietly. He was young, maybe 25 years old. This was his first major diplomatic mission. At the far end of the table sat the Vrexians. Ha-Yoon had seen pictures, but pictures did not capture their true size. High Commander Talvex stood nearly 8 feet tall. His scales were dark green and reflected the harsh lights. His eyes were yellow with vertical pupils like a snake. 4 other Vrexians sat beside him, all wearing armor that looked both decorative and functional. "Captain Kim," Talvex said. His voice was deep and rumbling. The translator device on the table converted his words into English a second later. "We are pleased you could attend." Ha-Yoon bowed her head slightly. "The honor is mine, High Commander. Earth is grateful for this opportunity to discuss trade relations." She sat down. Jae-min sat beside her, already opening his datapad to take notes. Around the room, other aliens watched from observation booths. The Zelthians were there, small and bird-like. The Orlasians were present too, floating in their environment suits filled with ammonia gas. Everyone wanted to see how humanity would handle the Vrexians. The Vrexian Empire controlled 12 star systems. Their military was legendary. For 10,000 years, they had expanded across the galaxy. Species that resisted were crushed. Species that submitted were allowed to exist under Vrexian rule. It was simple and brutal and effective. "Let us begin," Talvex said. He gestured, and a hologram appeared above the table. It showed trade routes between human space and Vrexian territory. "We have reviewed Earth's proposal. It is inadequate." Ha-Yoon studied the hologram. The Vrexian counterproposal appeared next to it. She read through the terms quickly. They wanted exclusive mining rights to 3 human colonies. They wanted free passage through all human space. They wanted Earth to share all military technology. In return, they offered minimal trade goods and no technology exchange. "I see," Ha-Yoon said calmly. "Thank you for your counterproposal. However, I must respectfully decline these terms." The room became very quiet. One of the Vrexian advisors, an older one with scarred scales, leaned forward slightly. His eyes widened just a fraction. The other observers in their booths stopped their side conversations. Talvex stared at Ha-Yoon for a long moment. Then he stood up. His full height was impressive. The armor he wore made him look even larger. He placed his clawed hands on the table and leaned toward Ha-Yoon. "Decline?" His voice carried a dangerous edge. "Perhaps you do not understand your position, Captain Kim. Your species has been traveling in space for barely 100 years. You have 47 colony worlds. Your military has 300 ships." He paused, letting his words sink in. Ha-Yoon did not move. She kept her hands folded on the table, her expression neutral. "We have conquered systems for 10,000 years, Talvex continued. The Vrexian fleet numbers over 5,000 warships. We have destroyed civilizations older and more advanced than yours. We have burned worlds that defied us." Jae-min shifted in his seat. His hand moved toward his own datapad, but Ha-Yoon touched his arm gently. A small gesture that said, "Wait, stay calm." Talvex leaned even closer. "So when I present terms, lesser species accept them. They understand the alternative. They know what happens to those who refuse the Vrexian Empire." His yellow eyes fixed on Ha-Yoon. "Do you understand, Captain Kim? Accept our terms, or we will demonstrate why species across the galaxy bow before us." The threat hung in the air. It was clear and direct. The Vrexians would use force if necessary. They had the power to destroy Earth's colonies. They had done it to others before. Ha-Yoon looked at Talvex. She was silent for 3 full seconds. Then, slowly, a smile appeared on her face. It was small at first, just a slight curve at the corners of her mouth. Then it grew a little wider. The smile did not reach her eyes. Her eyes remained calm and focused, but the smile was there, clear and unmistakable. Talvex stared at her. His head tilted slightly, confusion crossing his features. This was not the reaction he expected. Humans were supposed to be afraid. They were supposed to beg or argue or show anger. They were not supposed to smile. "Is something amusing, Captain?" Talvex asked. Hayun did not answer immediately. Instead, she picked up her datapad and began scrolling through files. Her movements were casual, unhurried. She could have been checking her messages or reading a book. The smile remained on her face. The scarred Vrexian advisor leaned toward Talvex and whispered something urgent. His name was Kexanar, and he had studied human history as part of his intelligence work. What he whispered made Talvex pause. "Silence," Talvex snapped at his advisor. But Kexanar's scales had changed color slightly, becoming paler, the Vrexian's version of going pale. In the observation booths, the other species began receiving messages. The Zelthian ambassador, Rilith, opened an urgent communication from her government. She read it quickly, her feathered crest flattening against her head in alarm. The message read, "Do not escalate situation. Human psychology assessment attached. Review Proxima Station incident immediately. Recommend extreme caution." The Orlasian representative received a similar message. So did the Thanari observer. All across the station, intelligence services were sending warnings about threatening humans. Hayun finally looked up from her datapad. The smile was still there, but now she spoke. Her voice was pleasant, almost friendly. "High Commander Talvex, I appreciate your description of Rexian military capabilities. Truly, your empire's history is impressive." She set down her datapad and folded her hands again. "Before we continue, may I share a story? It's a brief one, from my homeworld's history. I think it might provide some context for our discussion." Talvex crossed his arms. "If you wish. On Earth, we had a period called the Cold War," Hayun began. Her tone was conversational, like a teacher explaining something to students. Two groups of humans built weapons. Terrible weapons. Bombs that could destroy entire cities. Each side built thousands of these bombs. She paused, making sure everyone was following. These weapons were so powerful that if one side used them, the other side would use theirs. Both sides would be destroyed. Everyone would die. We called it mutually assured destruction. The fascinating part, Hayun continued, is that both sides had these weapons pointed at each other for decades, 45 years. And during that time, there were several moments when war almost started. Mistakes were made. Sensors gave false warnings. Submarines nearly launched their missiles. The room was absolutely silent now. Even Talvex had stopped moving. "But here's what I want you to understand, Commander," Hayun said. Her smile had faded now. Her expression was serious and calm. "We built weapons that could destroy our own planet. We pointed them at ourselves. And we lived that way for half a century. We played games of brinksmanship that could have ended our entire species." She leaned forward slightly. "And we didn't use them. Not because we couldn't, not because we were afraid, but because we understood something very important about leverage and acceptable losses." Kexnar's scales had gone even paler. Talvex was staring at Hayun with an expression that was no longer confident. The other observers were absolutely silent in their booths. Hayun picked up her datapad again. "Now then, shall we discuss the trade terms? I have some thoughts on a more equitable arrangement." Her smile returned, small, calm, and absolutely terrifying. The silence in the conference room stretched on. Hayun continued reviewing her datapad as if nothing unusual had happened. She scrolled through files, made a few notes, and remained completely calm. Beside her, Jamin sat frozen, not sure what to do. He had never seen anything like this in diplomatic training. Talvex stood at his end of the table, still towering over everyone. But something had changed. His posture was not as confident as before. His yellow eyes kept moving between Hayun and his advisor Kexnar. The other Vrexian guards shifted their weight, their clawed hands moving slightly toward their weapons and then away again. 60 seconds passed. Then 90. Hyun did not look up. The only sound was the quiet hum of the station's air recyclers and the soft tapping of her finger on the datapad screen. Kexnar leaned toward Talvex again. This time he whispered more urgently. His voice was too quiet for the translators to catch, but his body language screamed warning. His tail had curled close to his body, a defensive posture among Vrexians. "Commander," Kexnar hissed, "I strongly recommend reconsidering this approach. The intelligence files on humans—" "I do not need intelligence files," Talvex said, but his voice lacked the earlier force. He tapped his claws on the table, a nervous gesture. "She is bluffing. All species bluff when cornered." "With respect, Commander," Kexnar said, "humans do not bluff about these matters. There was an incident 3 years ago, at Proxima Station. The files are concerning." In the observation booth, Ambassador Rileth was reading those exact files on her screen. Her feathered crest kept rising and falling in distress. The Proxima Station incident had been classified at the time, but intelligence services across the galaxy had obtained the details. What she read made her want to leave the room immediately. She quickly sent a message to her government. "Situation developing with humans and Vrexians. Strongly advise preparing diplomatic intervention. Human captain showing textbook pre-escalation behavior patterns. Vrexian commander does not understand the danger." The Orlasian representative was doing the same. Its tentacles moved rapidly across its communication device inside the environment suit. The message it sent was simple. "Humans have been threatened. Recommend evacuating non-essential personnel from this sector. If conflict occurs, blast radius will be significant." Hyun finally looked up from her datapad. She set it down gently and looked directly at Talvex. The smile was gone now. Her expression was neutral, professional, and somehow that was worse than the smile had been. "Hi, Commander," she said. "I apologize for the delay. I was reviewing some historical data that I thought might be relevant to our discussion. May I continue?" Talvex nodded slowly. He had sat back down, though he tried to make the movement look casual rather than uncertain. "You mentioned that your empire has conquered many civilizations," Hyun said. "That's true and well documented. Your military achievements are impressive by any standard. However, I think it's important to understand something about human military philosophy. We approach warfare very differently than most species." She stood up and walked to the hologram display. With a few gestures, she brought up new information. Maps of human space appeared, showing all 47 colony worlds and Earth itself. "Our species has had a very violent history," Hyun explained. "We spent thousands of years fighting each other, humans against humans. We developed many different approaches to warfare. We learned what works and what doesn't." She highlighted Earth on the display. "Our homeworld has seen countless wars. Some lasted decades. Some killed millions of people. We learned to fight in every environment. Deserts, jungles, mountains, oceans, cities. We learned to fight with everything from swords to nuclear weapons." Talvex listened, but his expression suggested he did not see the point. "Many species have violent histories. What makes humans different?" Hyun turned to face him directly. "What makes us different, Commander, is that we learn to lose. We learn to lose in ways that make winning pointless for the other side." She gestured at the hologram. "Let me give you an example from our history. There was a battle called Thermopylae. 300 soldiers held a narrow passage against an army of maybe 100,000. They knew they would die. They knew they could not win. But they fought anyway because their goal was not victory. Their goal was to make the enemy pay such a terrible price that the larger strategic situation would change. They all died," Hyun continued. "But they delayed the enemy long enough for their allies to prepare. They killed so many enemy soldiers that the invasion force was weakened. They did not win the battle, but they achieved their goal." Kexnar was nodding slowly. He understood. Talvex still looked confused. "Another example," Hyun said. "A city called Stalingrad. One side surrounded the city completely. They had more troops, more weapons, more supplies. Victory should have been certain. The battle lasted 5 months. Nearly 2 million people died. The city was destroyed completely. But the defenders refused to surrender. They fought for every building, every room, every pile of rubble. The attackers won the city. But they lost so many soldiers that their entire campaign collapsed." She brought up more information on the hologram. "We have dozens of examples like this throughout our history. Humans who chose to die rather than surrender. Not because death was preferable, but because making the enemy pay for victory was the actual goal. Talvex was starting to understand. His scales had lost some of their shine. You are saying that humans would rather die than submit. Not exactly, Hayun said. We're saying that we understand mathematics. We understand acceptable losses. And we understand that sometimes, making sure your enemy cannot enjoy their victory is more important than surviving. She sat back down and picked up her datapad again. During our Cold War, we developed submarine technology. Nuclear submarines that could stay underwater for months. Each submarine carried missiles with nuclear warheads. If our nation was destroyed, the submarines had orders to surface and launch their missiles. Even if everyone on land was dead, the submarines would ensure our enemy was destroyed too. We called them dead man switches, Hayun continued. Systems designed to activate after we were already dead. The logic was simple. If you kill us, we will kill you. Even from beyond the grave. Even if it serves no purpose. Even if it's just spite. The conference room was completely silent. Every species listening had stopped moving. The weight of what Hayun was describing settled over everyone like a heavy blanket. So when you threaten humanity, Commander, Hayun said softly, what you need to understand is that we have already calculated acceptable losses. We have already decided how many of our worlds we would sacrifice. We have already prepared for the possibility that Earth itself might be destroyed. And we have built our military doctrine around ensuring that whoever destroys us will be destroyed in return. She looked directly into Talvex's yellow eyes. Your empire has 5,000 ships. You could destroy many of our colonies. You might even destroy Earth. But we have 47 colony worlds, and each one is prepared to fight to the last person. Each one has the capability to deny you any resources. Each one will make you pay. So here is the mathematics, Commander. You could kill billions of humans. But we number over 13 billion across all our worlds. How many Vrexians can die before your empire decides the cost is too high? How many ships can you lose before you cannot defend your other territories? How many dead before your people ask why their leaders started a war with species that turns victory into ashes? Talvex had no answer. His advisor Kexnar had gone completely still, his scales pale and his eyes wide. The other Vrexian guards were looking at each other nervously. Hayun set down her datapad one more time. She folded her hands and smiled again. This time the smile was warmer, more genuine. But Commander Talvex, she said pleasantly, I did not come here to discuss war. I came here to discuss trade. Would you like to hear our revised proposal? I believe I can offer terms that benefit both our peoples significantly. The panic in the room was quiet but unmistakable. Every alien present had just learned the same lesson. Humans could not be threatened. They could only be negotiated with. 3 years earlier, the Proxima system had been quiet. The mining colony there was small, just 200 workers and their families. They mined rare minerals from 3 asteroid belts. The work was hard, but the pay was good. Most workers stayed for 2-year contracts and then went home. Administrator Hyunwoo Park ran the station efficiently. He was 41 years old, married with 2 children back on Earth. He had managed mining operations for 15 years. Everyone respected him because he was fair and calm under pressure. He always kept his word. The station itself was simple. Living quarters, mining control center, storage facilities, and a small dock for cargo ships. Defense systems were minimal. 2 automated turrets for asteroid collision prevention. No military ships. No soldiers. Just workers. The Krellian pirates appeared on sensors without warning. 6 ships, all heavily armed. They were insectoid creatures, known across the galaxy for brutality. When they raided, they took everything. Resources, technology, prisoners. What they could not take, they destroyed. Chief Engineer Yoonji Lee was in the control room when the ships appeared. She was younger than Hyunwoo, only 32, but she knew every system on the station perfectly. She had built half of them herself. She immediately called Hyunwoo. Administrator, we have 6 unknown ships on approach. They're not responding to hails. Configuration matches Krellian Raider class. Hyunwoo arrived in the control room 30 seconds later. He looked at the sensor displays and understood immediately. Help was 4 days away. The nearest human military ship was patrolling a different sector. The station's communication signals would take hours to reach anywhere useful. Sound evacuation alarm, Hyunwoo said calmly. Get everyone to the emergency shelters. Seal all external doors. Yoonji's hands moved across the controls. Throughout the station, alarms began blaring. Workers dropped their tools and ran for the shelters. They had trained for this, though nobody thought it would actually happen. The Krellian ships moved into orbit around the station. One of them, the largest, opened a communication channel. The image appeared on Hyunwoo's screen. A Krellian commander, its mandibles clicking. "Human station," the Krellian said through its translator. "You will surrender immediately. Open all docks. Disable all systems. Gather all personnel in the main bay. If you comply, deaths will be minimal. If you resist, we will kill everyone." Hyunwoo looked at the screen for a moment. Then he looked at Yoonji. She met his eyes and nodded once. She understood what he was thinking. "Negative," Hyunwoo said. His voice was steady. "We cannot comply with your demands." The Krellian's mandibles spread in what might have been surprise. "You refuse? You have no military ships. Your weapons cannot harm us. Surrender or die." "You do not understand," Hyunwoo said. "I am not refusing because I think we can fight you. I am refusing because if you board this station, we will activate Protocol Scorched Earth." There was a pause. "What is this protocol?" Hyunwoo pulled up a display and sent it to the Krellian ship. "This station's main reactor can be overloaded. When overloaded, it will explode with the force of a small nuclear weapon. The blast radius will destroy everything within 50 kilometers. Your ships are within 30 kilometers. You would kill your own people?" The Krellian sounded skeptical. "Yes," Hyunwoo said simply. "If the choice is between capture and death, we choose death. But we do not choose to die alone. If you board this station, I will overload the reactor. Your ships will be destroyed. My people will die, but so will all of yours." Yoonji brought up the reactor controls on her screen. Her hand moved to the override panel. The safety protocols would need to be disabled manually. She began entering the codes. "You are bluffing," the Krellian said. "Test that theory if you wish," Hyunwoo replied. "I am giving you 60 seconds to withdraw to a safe distance. After 60 seconds, if any of your ships attempts to board or if you open fire, I will activate the protocol. The countdown begins now." Yoonji pulled up a timer on the main screen. 60 seconds appeared and began counting down. 59, 58, 57. In the Krellian command ship, the raiders were having an urgent discussion. They had raided dozens of stations. Most surrendered immediately. Some fought and were destroyed. But none had ever threatened mutual destruction. The Krellian studied the human's biosigns. He was calm. His heart rate was steady. He was not showing signs of panic or deception. 45 seconds. 44. 43. Hyunwoo's hand moved to his own control panel. He had administrative override access. He could initiate the overload sequence with a single command. His finger hovered over the control. He did not look away from the screen. Yoonji stood beside him. She had disabled all the safety protocols. The reactor was ready. If Hyunwoo gave the command, the chain reaction would start. It would take 30 seconds to become unstoppable. They would have 30 seconds to change their minds. She did not think they would. 30 seconds. 29, 28. In the emergency shelters, 200 people waited. They could hear the countdown over the intercom. Some were crying. Some were praying. Some sat in silence. All of them trusted Hyunwoo. If he said this was necessary, then it was necessary. 15 seconds. 14. 13. The Krellian commander made a decision. All ships withdraw to 100 kilometers. Maximum speed, the raider ships began moving. Their engines flared bright as they accelerated away from the station. But they were not moving fast enough. Not yet. 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7. Hyunwoo watched the sensors. The ships were accelerating, but they were still within the blast radius. His finger remained over the control. Yoonji was watching the reactor status. Everything was ready. 3 seconds. 2. 1. At 7 seconds remaining, the last Krellian ship crossed the 50-kilometer threshold. They were clear. Hyunwoo kept counting anyway. 0. He did not press the button. Instead, he opened the communication channel again. "You are now outside the blast radius. Leave the system immediately. If you return, I will not give you 60 seconds. I will activate the protocol the moment you enter range." The Krellian ships did not respond. They continued accelerating until they reached jump distance. Then they vanished into faster-than-light travel, fleeing the system. Yoonji let out a long breath. Her hands were shaking now. During the countdown, they had been steady. Now that it was over, the fear caught up with her. Hyunwoo's hands were shaking too. Re-enable the safety protocols, Hyunwoo said quietly. Then send a message to Earth. Full report on what happened here. The report reached Earth 3 days later. It reached the Galactic Federation Intelligence Services 1 day after that. The security footage from the station was analyzed by every major power in the galaxy. Psychologists studied Hyunwoo's behavior during those 60 seconds. The conclusion was unanimous and terrifying. He had not been bluffing. If the Krellians had not withdrawn, he would have destroyed the station. He would have killed everyone, including himself, rather than allow capture. And he would have done it calmly, without hesitation, because that was the logical choice given the circumstances. The Galactic Federation issued a classified report. The title was simple: Human Psychology Assessment, Threat Level Maximum. The report's conclusion was shared with all member species. Humans will choose mutual destruction over submission. They are not aggressive by nature, but they are absolutely willing to die if it means their opponent does not win. Recommend all species treat humans as peer-level threats regardless of technological capabilities. This was the incident that Kexnar had mentioned to Talvex. This was why every intelligence service in the galaxy had sent warnings when the Rexian commander threatened Hyun. The aliens had learned a lesson at Proxima Station. Humans could not be threatened. They could only be destroyed. And destroying them meant they would take you with them. Back in the conference room, Hyun pulled up more information on the holographic display. She moved her hands through the air, sorting through files and images. Talvex watched her carefully. His earlier confidence was completely gone. Kexnar sat rigid in his seat, already understanding what was coming next. "Commander," Hyun said, "I want to be very clear about something. I am not threatening you. I am educating you. There is a difference." She brought up images of Earth. Beautiful images. Blue oceans, green forests, massive cities that sparkled with lights at night. This is my homeworld. 12 billion people live there. It is the center of human civilization. Our capital. Our cultural heart. Everything we are comes from this planet. The images changed. Now they showed cities destroyed. Buildings collapsed. Craters where neighborhoods had been. This is also Earth. These images are from our history. From when we fought each other. We destroyed our own cities. We burned our own forests. We poisoned our own water. And we did this to ourselves. Talvex leaned forward. "Why would you do such things?" "Because winning was more important than preserving what we had," Hyun explained. "In war, humans will sacrifice anything to ensure victory, or at least to prevent defeat. We burned our own cities rather than let enemies take them. We destroyed our own supplies rather than let enemies use them. We have a long history of this behavior." She changed the display again. This time it showed military installations, ships under construction, training facilities. After we unified as a species and went to space, we built our military doctrine around this principle. Every human colony has the same protocols as Proxima Station. Every human ship has self-destruct capabilities. Every human military officer is trained to make the same choice Hyunwoo made. Jaemin spoke for the first time since the meeting began. His voice was quiet but clear. The doctrine was designed by strategist Min Seo Choi. She studied every war in human history. She calculated the optimal strategy for a species that is technologically inferior, but needs to deter aggression. Hyun nodded at her assistant. "Lieutenant Yoon is correct." Min Seo Choi realized something important. We cannot win a conventional war against most galactic powers. Your ships are faster. Your weapons are stronger. Your military is larger and more experienced. So we changed the definition of winning, Hyun continued. For us, winning does not mean destroying you. Winning means making the cost of aggression so high that you never want to fight us in the first place. We call it deterrence through unacceptable losses. She pulled up a detailed tactical analysis. Numbers and projections filled the hologram. Let me show you the mathematics. Earth has 12 billion people. Our 47 colonies have a combined population of 1 billion more. 13 billion humans total. If you destroyed Earth and our 10 largest colonies, you would kill approximately 8 billion humans. This would be the greatest tragedy in our history. It would devastate us culturally, economically, and emotionally. She paused, letting the number sink in. 8 billion dead. The room was completely silent. But, Hyun continued, that still leaves 5 billion humans alive across 37 colonies. Those 5 billion would be united by one single purpose: revenge. They would have access to all our military technology, they would have industrial capacity, and they would be absolutely committed to ensuring you paid for what you did. The display changed to show Vrexian territory. Your empire controls 12 star systems. Population approximately 4 billion across all worlds. Your military consists of 5,000 ships and 2 million soldiers. These are impressive numbers. But here is the question, Commander. How many of your people can die before your empire collapses? We have studied your species. You value glory and legacy. You fight for honor. These are noble reasons to fight. Hayun's voice became softer, almost gentle. But humans will fight for spite. We will fight knowing we cannot win. We will fight just to make sure you lose more than we do. And we will keep fighting until either you are destroyed or we are completely extinct. There is no middle ground. She brought up historical battle data. I mentioned Stalingrad earlier. Let me tell you about another battle. It was called the Battle of Berlin. The city was surrounded. Everyone knew the war was lost. Surrender was the logical choice. But humans fought for every street, every building, every room. Why? Because making the enemy pay for victory was more important than survival. Another example, Hayun continued. During one of our world wars, a nation developed pilots who would fly their aircraft directly into enemy ships. They called them kamikaze. These pilots would die to destroy a single enemy vessel. The exchange rate was 1 life for 1 ship. And thousands of pilots volunteered. Talvex's scales had become dull. His color had changed. For a warrior species, this was deeply disturbing. Glory required surviving to celebrate victory. What honor was there in mutual destruction? I see you understand now, Hayun said. This is why I smiled when you threatened me, Commander. Not because I am brave or foolish, but because your threat was meaningless. You cannot intimidate a species that has already accepted death as an acceptable outcome. She closed the holographic displays and sat down. Her expression was calm and professional again. So let me be absolutely clear about humanity's position. We do not want war. We prefer peace and cooperation. We believe trade and cultural exchange benefit everyone. But if you force us to choose between submission and mutual destruction, we will choose mutual destruction every single time. It is not a bluff. It is not bravery. It is simply mathematics and psychology. We have calculated that being destroyed while taking our enemy with us is preferable to living under someone else's control. In the observation booths, every species representative was taking notes. This was information that would be shared with governments across the galaxy. The human position was now perfectly clear. They could be negotiated with, traded with, even allied with. But they could never be conquered. Ambassador Rileth sent another message to her government. Recommend immediate upgrade of human diplomatic status to peer-level power. Their lack of advanced technology is irrelevant. Their psychological profile makes them effectively unconquerable. Advise treating all human proposals with serious consideration. The Orlasian representative sent a similar assessment. Human defensive doctrine is based on Pyrrhic victory principle. Any species attempting conquest will win in name only. Actual result will be mutual devastation. Recommend avoiding all military conflict with humans. Kexnar leaned toward Talvex one more time. Commander, I strongly recommend we accept their trade proposal. Whatever terms they offer will be infinitely preferable to the alternative. Talvex nodded slowly. He was a warrior, not a fool. He understood tactics and strategy. Hayun had just demonstrated that fighting humans was the worst possible tactical choice. You might win battles, but you would lose everything that mattered. Captain Kim, Talvex said, his voice much quieter than before. I believe I was hasty in my earlier statements. You are correct that negotiation is preferable to conflict. I would very much like to hear your trade proposal. Hayun smiled again. This time it was warm and genuine. Thank you, Commander. I believe you will find our proposal quite reasonable. We are offering technology exchange and manufacturing and agriculture. We request access to Vrexian expertise in faster-than-light navigation and defensive shielding. We also propose joint military exercises focused on anti-piracy operations. She pulled up the actual proposal. The terms were fair. Not generous, but fair. Both sides would benefit. Both sides would gain valuable technology and resources. It was the kind of deal that made sense for partners, not for conquerors and subjects. We are also prepared to share our defensive protocols with your empire, Hayun added. Many species in the galaxy would benefit from understanding human tactics for deterrence. Pirates and raiders become much less bold when they know their targets will fight to mutually assured destruction. Talvex reviewed the proposal carefully. Kexnar looked over his shoulder, reading quickly. After several minutes, Talvex looked up. These terms are acceptable. More than acceptable. They are fair to both parties. I am glad you think so, Hayun said. Humanity believes that the best agreements are those where both sides gain something valuable. We are not interested in exploiting others. We want partners and allies. She stood and extended her hand in the human gesture of agreement. Talvex looked at the hand for a moment, then stood and grasped it carefully. His clawed hand was enormous compared to hers, but he was gentle. To partnership, Hayun said. To partnership, Talvex repeated, and to understanding. Around the conference room, tension that had been building for the past hour suddenly released. Other species representatives began talking excitedly. A major agreement had just been reached. More importantly, a potential war had been avoided. Everyone understood they had witnessed something significant. Jae-min quietly made notes on his datapad. He had learned more about diplomacy in the past hour than in all his years of training. He glanced at Hayun with new respect. She had transformed a threat into a negotiation without ever raising her voice or showing fear. The real negotiation was about to begin. The actual negotiations took 3 hours. Hayun and Talvex went through every detail of the trade agreement. Technology transfers, resource allocations, shipping routes, security protocols. Everything was discussed openly and honestly. The atmosphere had completely changed from the beginning of the meeting. Jae-min took detailed notes on everything. He watched Hayun work and learned. She listened carefully to Rexian concerns. She offered compromises when appropriate. She stood firm on issues that mattered to humanity. It was masterful diplomacy. Kexnar proved to be a valuable voice in the negotiations. His knowledge of human culture helped bridge several gaps. When Talvex suggested terms that might offend humans, Kexnar gently redirected the discussion. When Hayun proposed something that Rexian culture might reject, Kexnar explained why and offered alternatives. I have been studying your species for 5 years, Kexnar admitted during a break. Your history is fascinating. So much conflict, yet you always survive. Always adapt. I tried to warn the commander, but he did not understand until you explained it directly. Hayun smiled at him. You did warn him. I heard you. Thank you for that. It made the conversation easier. May I ask a question? Kexnar said. When you smiled at the commander's threat, were you afraid? Hayun considered the question carefully. Yes, I was terrified. The thought of war terrifies me. The thought of billions dying terrifies me. But fear is just information. It tells you the stakes are high. What matters is what you do with that fear. And what did you do with it? Kexnar asked. I used it to stay focused, Hayun replied. Fear made me careful with my words. It made me think about consequences. But I could not let it control my decisions. Commander Talvex needed to understand that threats would not work. Only after he understood that could we have a real conversation. Kexnar's scales shifted color slightly, showing respect. You are a formidable diplomat, Captain Kim. Your species is fortunate to have you. By the end of the 3rd hour, the agreement was complete. Both sides had gained valuable concessions. The technology exchange would benefit both civilizations. The security cooperation would help protect trade routes from pirates. The cultural exchange programs would build understanding between species. Talvex reviewed the final document one last time. He looked at Hayun across the table. Captain Kim, I must apologize for my earlier behavior. I approached this negotiation with assumptions that were incorrect. No apology necessary, Commander, Hayun said. You were working with incomplete information. Now you have better information. That is how understanding grows. May I ask you a direct question? Talvex said. Of course. If I had not backed down, if I had continued to threaten you, what would you have done? Hayun met his eyes steadily. I would have stood up, thanked you for your time, and left this station. Then I would have reported to my government that peaceful negotiation was not possible. What happened after that would have been beyond my control. You would have walked away, Talvex said slowly, and started a war. No, Commander. I would have walked away and avoided one. If your empire chose to attack after that, the war would have been your choice, not mine. But yes, I was prepared to walk away. Talvex was quiet for a moment. That takes remarkable courage. Or remarkable stubbornness, Hayun said with a slight smile. Sometimes it is hard to tell the difference. Both leaders signed the agreement. The holographic display recorded their signatures. Officially, humanity and the Vrexian Empire were now trade partners and security allies. The implications would ripple across the galaxy. In the observation booths, representatives from dozens of species were already sending reports home. The message was consistent across all communications. Humans were now a peer-level power. Not because of technology or military strength, but because of psychology and will. Ambassador Ryleth's final report was direct. Human diplomatic strategy is built on the foundation of mutually assured destruction. They cannot be bullied, cannot be conquered, and will not submit under any circumstances. However, they are excellent partners when treated with respect. Recommend all future dealings with humanity be conducted as equals. The Orlasian representative's report was similar. Humans have weaponized their own mortality. They understand that sometimes the best defense is making victory worthless to the attacker. This makes them dangerous enemies but reliable allies. Recommend pursuing cooperative relationships. After the signing, Hayun and her team prepared to leave the station. As they walked toward the docking bay, they passed through common areas where other species worked and lived. Several aliens stopped to stare at the human delegation. The story of what happened in the conference room had already spread. One young Zelthian, barely an adult, approached nervously. "Excuse me, Captain Kim. May I ask a question?" Hayun stopped and smiled warmly. "Of course. What would you like to know?" "Is it true that humans would really destroy themselves rather than surrender?" Hayun knelt down to be at eye level with the young alien. "That is a complicated question. Humans love life. We want to live, grow, learn, and be happy. We build beautiful things and care for each other. We do not want to die." She paused, making sure the young Zelthian was following. "But we also believe that some things are more important than individual survival. Freedom is one of those things. The right to make our own choices is one of those things. So yes, if we had to choose between living under someone else's control or dying free, most humans would choose to die free." "That sounds scary," the young Zelthian said. "It is scary," Hayun agreed. "But it also means that humans will always fight for what we believe is right. And it means that other species know they cannot control us through fear. That makes the galaxy safer for everyone, because powerful species learn to negotiate instead of conquer." The young Zelthian thought about this, then nodded. "I understand. Thank you, Captain." As Hayun and her team continued to the docking bay, Jamin spoke quietly. "Captain, that was a good explanation. Simple but true. Thank you, Lieutenant. Sometimes the simple explanations are the best ones." Their ship was waiting in the docking bay. It was a standard diplomatic vessel, nothing impressive by galactic standards, but it carried the flag of Earth, and that flag now meant something different than it had yesterday. As they boarded, Security Chief Da-Un Song joined them. She had been waiting on the ship, ready to extract the diplomatic team if things went badly. "Captain, I heard what happened in there." "Well done. You never doubted the outcome, did you, Doan?" Hayun asked with a smile. "Not for a second, Captain. I know how you work." The ship departed from Station Gamma 7. As they entered faster than light travel, Hayun sat in her quarters and began writing her report. It would go to Director Bora Kang at the Diplomatic Corps. The report was straightforward and professional, but Hayun added a personal note at the end. "Director Kang, the Vrexians are not our enemies. They are potential allies who simply needed to understand that we cannot be intimidated. Once that understanding was established, productive negotiation became possible. I believe this pattern will repeat with other species. They need to learn that humans are partners, not subjects. Once they learn that lesson, cooperation follows naturally." Hayun sent the report and leaned back in her chair. She was exhausted. The meeting had taken every bit of mental energy she had. But it was worth it. War had been avoided. A new alliance had been formed. Humanity's position in the galaxy was stronger. She thought about Hyunwoo Park at Proxima Station. His willingness to sacrifice everything had created the foundation for today's success. His courage had taught the galaxy that humans could not be threatened. Hayun made a mental note to send him a message. He deserved to know that his actions had mattered. On the bridge, Jamin was reviewing his notes from the meeting. He had learned so much. How to stay calm under pressure. How to transform threats into negotiations. how to use fear as information rather than letting it control decisions. He hoped he would have the chance to use these lessons in his own diplomatic career. Dayun-song checked the ship's sensors one final time before heading to her quarters. Everything was normal. No threats, no problems. Just another successful diplomatic mission, though this one had been more intense than most. Back on Station Gamma 7, Talvex and Kexanar were having a private conversation. The commander looked tired, his scales dull from stress. "I almost started a war today," Talvex said quietly. "Yes, Commander. You did," Kexanar replied honestly. "And you tried to warn me." "I did, but you had to see it for yourself. Sometimes warnings are not enough. Sometimes we need direct experience to truly understand." Talvex was quiet for a long moment. "I will never threaten a human again, not because I fear them, but because I respect them. They are worthy allies." "That is wisdom, Commander," Kexanar said, "and that wisdom will serve our empire well." The story of what happened at Station Gamma 7 spread quickly through diplomatic channels. Within days, every major power in the galaxy knew about the meeting. The human who smiled at a threat. The Vrexian commander who learned to negotiate instead of conquer. It became a lesson taught in diplomatic schools across dozens of worlds, and humanity continued its expansion into the galaxy, one careful diplomatic mission at a time.